Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Question Your Perception. This is Matthew Taylor of the Freedom Paradox.
I am Scott Marshall of the Oath Accountability Project.
And I'm Bill Godin joining me again.
So, guys, how has your week been while I share this all around the internet?
Fairly uneventful, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen lots of cops around town and stuff. Not much going on, same as last week. Boring shit, same old, same old.
Same old, same old. Yeah, know, that seems to be...
I'm not sure if I mentioned the lawsuit, not this past Friday, but the Friday before. It got the officer got granted an extension to respond to the lawsuit, which basically I think means that he has to talk to his people and figure out, are we going to fight this or are we going to settle? So I think they're probably going to lean towards trying to settle, and I'll leave that up to my lawyer to decide if that's the case, but my lawyer seems pretty confident.
That's cool. That's definitely an awesome update. I know you guys have definitely been fighting this since, what, October of last year?
Yeah, October of last year is when it happened, October 10th, I believe. And we went through, we beat the trespassing charges.
In epic fashion, by the way.
Oh, it was so beautiful. We beat those charges, and now we're in the middle of this lawsuit, and we're just waiting for the cop to respond. So,
we have ourselves tonight, as anybody who is viewing, a pretty interesting topic. I know with it being, September 12th, 15 years later, yesterday was a pretty big emotional day for a lot of people. And everybody knows what I'm talking about. I'm talking about 9/11. But
9/11, 9/11.
And whether you...
Hey, do you know what the difference between a cow and 9/11 is?
What's that?
You can't milk a cow for 15 years.
Oh.
I mean, maybe you can, but...
Yeah, we discussed this earlier. I don't know if we can or not.
I don't know for sure, but...
I mean, cows do have a longer lifespan than I think 15 years. But at the end of the day, damn, that's still a good one. But it's definitely one of those topics that whether you believe the official story because you're a sheep or you are smart enough to read through the plot holes all over the story, no matter what, at the end of the day, there's no way to feel good about what happened. No matter what, people died.
3,000 some people died.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
But I mean, putting aside that a lot of people ended up losing their lives, one thing that really just stands out to me is just the fact of what really happened that day. I know that we've kind of touched on this a little bit before, but we kind of pulled off a little bit because we were so close to the anniversary. We felt like keeping this close to the chest and really just discussing it for this episode.
Well, I mean, guys, I'm 42.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I was at work when this all went down. Where were you guys? I mean, I would assume school, right?
Yeah, I was in school. I was in a 7th grade life science class when they came over the announcement, and they didn't really say much. They just said that there's been some things around the country, and we just want you to know that you're safe. I mean, I don't know how they could possibly guarantee that, but
It's Richmond.
well, I guess it was just lip service, I guess, to try to everybody just calm down.
It's actually kind of crazy when you look at the flight paths of the planes. That several actually came very close to Allentown.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of bizarre when you think about it. That you might have looked up and saw that plane. I mean,
well, 2 of the flight paths actually crossed over. What was it, Andrews Air Force Base or something?
Yeah.
At the same time,
Yeah, and that didn't,
No, we're good.
Yeah, that's okay. But to answer your question, Bill, I was in 9th grade at the time, and I was sitting in history class of all classes.
Oh.
And somebody runs in and tells the teacher that we are not to turn the TVs on, that a plane had hit the World Trade Center, but this was they only one at this point, and that, you know, just keep things going like normal. And of course, you know, everybody in the classroom was like, "Wait, what? Like, turn that TV
Turn the
on,
TV
yo."
on.
And that's when, you know, about 30 minutes later, somebody came by and was like, the second plane hit. Don't turn the TVs on. And I actually got in a lot of trouble because I looked at my teacher and I said, we're in history class and history is happening now, so I'm turning the TV on. You know, and I turned the TV on. I stood there like a child, just watching the TV because I knew something crazy was happening, you know. But I think my most memorable thing from that day wasn't what actually happened. It was standing outside after we were all released early and just looking up at the sky and seeing nothing. You know, that's the first time in my entire life I'd ever looked up into the sky and not seen planes.
Right. I actually remember that. I remember the very same thing. I had gone down to a buddy's house early in the morning with diehard wrestling fans. We actually videotaped WWF the night before. Watched it at 7:30 in the morning. Got done with it, and because, you know, VCR had it on Channel 3.
Yep.
The news was on, and it showed a smoking World Trade Center building, and my first reaction, because I've been a smartass for a lot of years now, I was like, who the hell missed a building?
Yeah.
How do you miss a building?
Well, I remember when they first started reporting it, they didn't know, or they weren't saying what it hit, so they were saying things like a single engine plane and stuff like that, and then just the shock of everybody when that second plane just
came right into view,
barreled right into it. And another thing that was really something that hit home was no more than 2 weeks prior did I go on a field trip to New York City, and we were actually in the trade centers because they wanted us to go into the trade centers, and we went into the mall that was underneath it and everything and stuff like that. And talk about one of those things where you're like, oh damn, like I was just there. And that hit for a lot of us in the school. But also I went to school here in Pennsylvania, and there was a lot of kids in my school who, you know, lived in New York for quite some time and had moved. I mean, there was a massive influx the next year because so many people, you know, they just
get the hell out of Dodge.
They exodus. But it was one hell of a day. And I remember the next day we were supposed to go back to school, and I just looked at my mom and was like, yeah, it's not happening. Like, I'm watching this. Like, I want to see what's going on. And the more and more stuff that kept coming out, you know, it was crazy, you know, because at that time, you know, nobody, and I mean nobody, questioned that story. Nobody questioned. I mean, nobody was sitting there going, wow, they kind of figured out who this was pretty fast. I mean, being in school, and we got released by noon, and by noon, everybody in that school knew the name Osama bin Laden, and everybody across the country knew the name Osama bin Laden. And by the end of the night, even the president was on the news, Osama bin Laden. And, I mean, that was the first time in my lifetime I saw the country unify. Because, I mean, you look down your street, this way, that way, American flags everywhere. And it was like that, I would say, for a good solid
You couldn't
year.
find an American flag in a store. Like they.
Yeah, it was quite the long-term unifying event.
Oh yeah.
And I think a lot of that had to do with the narrative that went along with it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, just like Flight 93. I'd say when that story came out, that just unified people more. And, you know, nobody was really questioning it until the right questions were starting to be asked.
And you know, I don't think it could have happened had it. I think 2 to 3 years later, people would have absolutely been like, "What?" Like, because the internet, you know, was just kind of starting in 2001. It was still like this really, like, you know, it wasn't super small, but it was still coming into play. I mean, when did YouTube start? When was that?
Well, I mean, not for nothing, but at that point too, everybody we didn't carry mobile computers in our pocket. We had a phone that could play Snake, and we thought it was awesome.
Yeah, sit
So-
in the fucking bathroom and play Brick Breaker.
Yeah,
you know?
so text messages were something you could send, but even still, because of how many text messages were going through, I don't know if you tried to
I
send
actually
one
had
that
a pager.
day.
I had a pager that worked fantastic because the pager system was a little bit different.
Yeah, but the cell phones, oh my God, you tried to send a text message and it didn't happen. Tried to make a phone call, it just wasn't happening because everybody was on the networks. And
Yeah, it was super overloaded. The same thing. It was weird. The same thing happened when I lived in Richmond, and we had like sort of like a mini earthquake thing. For the first couple minutes, like you couldn't get through on the towers because they were just so jam packed. Everybody was calling everybody.
Wasn't that just a couple years ago?
Yeah, actually,
I remember my wife actually felt that up here.
Well, a little bit of an aside. I'm standing in Lowe's, and it was like in movies when you see like a doomsday scenario. Like everybody went quiet and looked around at everybody else. Like, what do we do? Like, what's going on? And like, you know, in Lowe's how they have the big ceiling fan display and it's all hooked on. That whole thing was just doing this. There was a guy up on one of those like step ladder things, and he saw him grab it, do this, and like then everybody just out the door.
Probably made it worse than anything. Him holding on like that.
But and I think we can all agree that at the beginning there was no question. Like what they said happened because we watched live as what they said happened.
And George Bush, the president at the time, actually looked like he was going along for the same ride that we were.
Oh yeah. And same with Rudolph Giuliani. He looked like he was going along.
Donald
with it too.
Rumsfeld.
Yeah.
Disheveled, like.
Yeah, like they had no idea what was going on. By the way, those men not only deserve their charges for war crimes, but they also deserve Academy Awards because they played that.
Well, for
Perfectly.
Maybe a few of them. I don't know.
Bush was not such a good actor. I mean,
right,
a little
right.
bit.
He definitely wouldn't get. Maybe gets a Razzie,
I'll give him a
Okay.
Razzie.
but not an Academy Award. Look at the book. Look at the
People's
book he's
Choice
reading.
Award. He gets a People's Choice Award.
that works. But I mean, it was insane. And then, like I said, the right questions started being asked. Like, where's the plane in the Pentagon? Where are the parts? Or the people who started asking the questions of, wait, you're telling me that you have 34 cameras facing that direction
84.
84 facing that direction from the top of the Pentagon, and the best you can give us is a
They gave us like 3
stop-
or 4.
is a
Gas-
stop.
A five stop frame footage of a parking meter thing.
Yeah,
And we got a gas station later on,
that
and then
shows
the DoubleTree.
absolutely no.
Yeah, the DoubleTree shows nothing. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's a shadow.
yeah, and it's just like some people started to get some questions, and then when Flight 93, there was just a hole in the ground, but you couldn't find plane parts anywhere, or seats, or bodies.
Yeah.
And
Not even a drop of blood. They couldn't find any blood.
yeah, and it's like, wait, what happened here? And then that's when people really started to dig, and oh my God, and I gotta say, I would say the civilian and internet population has done more to bring out the truth of this story than our government ever would.
And the government still sits there and this is what happened.
Well,
This
they
is what happened.
turned around, and the 9/11 Commission was brought into play.
You're
And
talking about actors.
oh yeah.
I mean, these guys are.
Underfunded.
Yeah, $15 million as of today is what has been spent by the U.S. government to look into the truth of 9/11. And what really bothers me is $60 million. We spent $60 million alone to find out if Bill Clinton really did get a blowjob or not.
And then we spend 45 on Tom Brady and his balls.
Yeah, $45 million on Tom Brady in 2 different investigations to find out if he deflated a football or not.
But only $15 million on the worst terrorist attack on U.S. soil.
Absolutely, which
And when they actually started cleaning up cleaning up and hauling away evidence before the investigators were even anywhere close to being ready to be in there.
yep.
And you were told initially, but the black box is nowhere to be found. I mean, the only 3 incidents on this planet that's ever happened. You knew where the planes crashed, and the black boxes were nowhere to be found. And slowly it leaks out. Yep, we found it. Yep, we found it. Yep, we found it. And
Even a guy said. Even a
Donald
guy.
Rumsfeld, Donald Rumsfeld. Listen, I heard it. Nothing of any value.
Yeah, but
Thanks,
will
buddy.
not release it
Right.
at all to the people, and they turn around, and then you start getting the families of the people who were on Flight 93 starting to come out and say, I got a phone call or I got a text message from my family member, and it sounded nothing like them. It's not the way they spoke. It sounded scripted. It sounded
People that use their first and their last name when talking to their mother that they talk
Yeah.
to
How
all
about
the
the
time.
fact that these guys are making cell phone calls from planes?
Yeah, when
Yeah.
when
That-
that technology didn't exist.
7-8 years away.
yeah.
So, I mean, U.S. Airways just actually in 2010 put the first cell phone transponder on one of their planes.
Yep.
And these calls were crystal clear. I've heard some of these recordings.
Oh yeah.
Are you telling me that back then in
And
2001?
and weren't these analog phones
Analog
as well?
phones,
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Yeah.
These were crystal clear. We know exactly
No
what's
static,
going on.
nothing. With an analog phone, you used to get some static when you start
Heard,
losing.
it was so clear. You heard crosstalk over it
Yeah,
from many different people at the same time.
yeah.
But then you have other really weird incidences that happen, like you have a building that falls. We'll get into the whole dynamic of how it fell later, but a building that is under an intense office fire where a plane hit it going 370 some miles an hour, turns into a complete fireball, but yet the passport to one of the terrorists just ends up on the side of the road.
Undamaged.
Unscathed.
Undamaged. They could
Yeah,
be,
I didn't even think there was any soot on it. It looked fresh out the printer. Like, come on, guys, you couldn't have taken that, rubbed it on your shirt a little bit, crinkled it up, something.
and then you
Step
look
on it.
2 years later when the BBC releases reports that 10 of these hijackers
They're still
are
alive.
still alive.
Oh yeah. Well, let's actually talk about the BBC real quick and about their little fiasco that happened on 9/11 itself.
Yeah, don't they have some psychics working over there or something?
I think
Yeah, it
it
was
does appear that way.
28 minutes prior to World Trade Center falling. In the background of their report, it's standing tall, and they're reporting the fact that Trade Center 7 has fallen.
And then they stay on the air reporting it, how it fell, why it fell, and you watch it fall.
Yeah.
This is a live report, a live feed, and you watch it fall. And you know what? We were still under the story that was being handed to us that we all sat there and watched it.
They were like, "Wow,
Wow.
like
That's-
maybe it was
It's
recorded, and they
Yeah.
just
Nope. Live feed.
No, she even says, "Look, as you can see behind me, look at all the stuff that's still happening." Like,
Yeah, nobody was immune from the story that we got fed. Okay, including I think some of the media outlets. I mean, they were just fed the line; they just read it.
yeah,
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no way to say we all didn't gobble that up because we did. We gobbled that story up.
I mean,
like
I was
it
so
true.
young. My thought of the government was,
They wouldn't do this.
flour and candies. They're these great people that are gonna protect us, and we live in a great land, and everything was stars and stripes, and then.
And I still think there's nothing wrong with Stars and Stripes. The country's great and all, but as for the government, well, maybe maybe they lied to you.
And I just want to throw this in here. A lot of people get country and government confused because they kind of like to think of them as the same thing, that your government is your country, but it's not. Government and country are two different things. I love my country, but I do not love my government.
That's fair. That is absolutely fair. And wow, I mean, what the thing is like, here we are 15 years later, and over the last 15 years, that rabbit hole has gotten really, really, really deep.
I mean, when you can go on YouTube and just type in 9/11 documentary, and you get more stuff that shows up about conspiracy theories than you do official story.
But you just did something interesting there.
Conspiracy
you
theory.
gave the whole air quotes. I mean, conspiracy.
Well, the definition of conspiracy, and which I've actually committed to memory, is when two or more people make a plan to do something that is illegal, dishonest, or immoral. Okay? So when two people decide that they're going to go rob a bank, that's a conspiracy. I mean, people have taken this word conspiracy, and that's almost become its own conspiracy.
Oh, yeah.
It's you say conspiracy, they're just about ready to fit you for the tinfoil hat.
Yeah, exactly.
But
So, like, us as conspiracy theorists, we've kind of like had to make ourselves avoid those sort of terms, like it's a conspiracy, because as soon as you do, I can guarantee you, if my buddy Chad's seen this, he's already posted a picture of a guy with a tinfoil hat on. If he saw this,
Sad thing is, if all my friends have seen this, they know this is the way I am.
well, no, he knows too. He just likes to.
well, there's a guy that I've kind of been getting into it
Sean.
with a little bit. What?
Sean?
No, it's not Sean. Actually, funny enough, he's not the one. I spent 2 years with him, but recently he's in the active service right now, and sure enough, does not want to hear or talk about the fact that he's being lied to by a rhetoric to make money for our government, for the Rothschilds, while he's serving overseas for a war that started over a lie. And I tried to tell him, I was like, listen, because he put something up on Facebook the other day that basically was like, if you don't believe the official story, you're kind of an idiot. So,
Really?
yeah, so I took this documentary that you can find on YouTube. I think Scott was actually watching it right as I pulled up to my driveway today. It's called Loose Change. And let me tell you, I don't care who you are. If you believe the official story or not, you turn around and you watch that, there is no way possible that you don't come out of that with questions of what really happened.
But they won't. They won't. And the thing is because they have this they have this core belief, and their core belief is that their government is 100% for them. They would protect them at all costs. But hearing something that goes against your core belief causes this knee-jerk recoil.
We had talked about this earlier.
And you have certain people feel like they have to protect their core belief, and even entertaining ideas that go against the core belief is actually, it's almost to a point where it's physically painful for these people. Like, they just
We actually just heard somebody say that to us today. That somebody else they just can't discuss it. They can't even entertain the fact that something can be questioned about it. I mean, I'm sure I could blow this person's mind with the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but once again, this is a government that turned around and gave us such wonderful things like the Kennedy assassination, where you sit there and you look at enough information, you go, well, there's no way that official story adds up. There's enough.
Imagine if the internet existed then.
Oh my God! Not only would we know who the babushka lady was, but she would have been on Snapchat like, I just saw this motherfucker get shot.
Well, I mean, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Is this couldn't have happened if they had waited a couple of years? They'd been like, no, you're crazy. We'll never get away with this. We'll never get away with this because there's too much. People are too connected. There's too much going on. I mean, people didn't even have. They had some phones, but they didn't have cameras on their phones yet. I mean, imagine if the camera, how many Instagrams or Vines would have been of planes flying into the towers with little cry emojis under them and stuff.
But we would have had that from every conceivable angle. Like, you could have fed that all into one supercomputer. It would have been like, here's your 360 diagram of exactly what happened. Like, it was going at this speed.
Here's this
yaw
trajectory.
Yeah, it changed. It's pitch and yaw right here at this exact moment.
We used advanced telemetry to,
Instead of and we probably would have even had a good facial recognition on the pilot.
Yeah.
You would have had passengers on the plane like, oh shit, we gonna die. The whole
World
thing.
Star.
Yeah, I mean the whole
Okay.
nine.
Right.
Sorry,
Sorry.
yeah, that was a little outside, but it's true though. At the end of the day, it would have been impossible for that story to have lasted as long as it did as truth.
Yeah.
I mean.
And I think if they could have predicted the internet, they would have said you're crazy. We're never going to get away with this. But I mean, I think at some point if just enough of the people in the government just refuse to acknowledge or even think twice about 9/11, then nothing's ever going to happen. And I don't think that we're ever officially going to get an answer or an admission, not unless we go through some sort of radical change.
Well, I mean, back in that day, the main thing that the internet was really used for was sending emails
Communication.
and maybe like an instant
Porn.
messenger, and of course porn.
Was it
really
porn
Lots
back
of
then?
porn. Yes,
really
lots of it.
slow downloaded photos of naked people.
I remember being in third grade.
Binning, binning.
Okay, in the second grade, we had little MS-DOS computers. I remember in third grade, we had, I think, the first Windows, or one of the
Windows
newer,
93.
yeah, something like that.
Was that what it was called?
And you would go to www.whitehouse.com instead of .gov.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah.
And you just got titties. I'd be sitting in class and be like, is this... I mean, is this our government? Because this is cool as shit.
They got titties on the
I will
wall.
pledge this flag all day.
Like, how old till I get to play with these titties? Like, America, land of the free, home of the... But...
Oh, man. I can't... We're probably getting reported on Facebook
Oh
right
my
now.
god. If not, that's a clip. But anyways... I see we have a couple viewers with us right now. Guys, drop your comments here in the chat and tell us what you think, or if you have any questions that you would like to hear us tackle, or just a part of the story or the narrative that you find fishy. Why don't you lay it down here in the chat, and we'll definitely jump on to it.
Well, to bring it back to Kennedy, and to kind of allude to our title or our subtitle, Northwoods 2, 9/11. Northwoods was in 1969? 1962.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you guys know a little bit better the date there. But basically the government and one of Kennedy's aides,
Admiral Lemonitz. Right?
Admiral Lemonitz,
And
came to him.
factions of the CIA.
Yeah, and came to him with an idea and said, hey, look, Cuba's kind of over there and we kind of really want to fuck with them. But we can't because all these people are going to get upset.
You know, well, they're in the midst of already having people pissed off that we're off in war right now, and the last thing you could really get them to sign off on was
More war.
More war.
Yeah, they were like, well, we've got to go get this guy Castro. You know, we gotta go deal with him. But you know, the people, they are not really happy about war, but we kind of really want to do this. And they're like, well, but you know, we have an idea. We're going to attack some of our stuff and then point the finger at them. And then we'll be able to expand our military and get a bunch of people on our side so that we can, you know, we can get the big push. You know, a lot of people will join up. We'll really get the boost that we need. And he's like, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
You're fired.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kennedy wanted nothing of that. And
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot of good things to say about Kennedy. I will say this, though. He seemed to be at least a man of principle.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to go for the, cold-blooded murder of Americans over some silly-ass false flag that would have accomplished the wants of the, as he coined it, the military-industrial complex. I think it's Eisenhower that actually coined it, but...
But I mean, what's crazy is that, you know, we had a president at that point who was like, no. And then, of course, we had a president, you know, back in 2000 and 2001 who was like, yo, what was this Northwood? Like, yo, dig that shit up. That was a great plan.
George couldn't spell Northwoods.
No, yeah.
And
it was Cheney
and
all
he was
day.
like,
Cheney
no,
was
no,
like,
he,
I got
he was
a plan.
like, I just saw this new TV show, and it was just the first episode, and they had a really good idea, and I think we should jump on this.
Like, y'all ever seen the X-Files? Like, yo, they just had this spin-off, and damn. Like, how much you think that's going to cost? I don't know. To hire all that, get everything in place and everything, probably about $2.3 trillion.
But see, I got a bunch of these brothers. I got a bunch of brothers that I think can help me out here.
Halliburton.
Yeah. Dick Cheney's like, wait, cha-ching. But yeah, we could get on this real quick. And, you know, we make light and we're joking around here, but there's this is serious. This is pretty damn close
It's
to what.
treason.
Yeah.
Is what it is. It's outright treason by the government. Mm-hmm. The very people who define whether if somebody else is treasonous. That's what they did.
I don't know if you could come up with a more egregious act of treason, or is the word malice a good word?
It's pretty
just-
decent.
Yeah.
3,000 counts of murder. That's
I
pretty
mean,
yeah.
full of malice, I would say.
Oh yeah.
It's just
It-
it's stupid, and it really is it's really even difficult for me to fathom. Like one of the hijackers, okay, he had his checked bags, but they didn't make it onto the plane with him. But in the bags, he had all kinds of stuff like tapes of VHS tapes of tours of the planes, and he had maps of the planes. He had his passport, and he even had his own will. Why would he be taking his will with him onto a plane that he's going to fly into a building and incinerate?
Burning fireball.
I mean,
Yeah.
But I mean, back up even still. Why? Okay, if you had videos and maps and all diagrams and stuff like that, I'd say by go time, that stuff's logged. Like, you're not going to be sitting there in the bathroom pulling out a diagram
right.
like, wait, which one's the front end of this plane again?
It's like Joey on Friends. Let me step inside the map here and see how this goes. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous to think that they're going to take the time. Hold on. What seat was I supposed to sit in again?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I mean, but
I'm
also,
just curious, how did they navigate to exactly where they wanted to be? Like, I've never heard anybody ask this question, but it's just a question that just popped in my head. How were they able to navigate to where? I mean, did they have a really good memory of what it looked like from above, like where they were going? I mean, they had to fly for 45 minutes. I mean, that's 45 minutes. You could just go a little bit either way, and
They're going to miss a city.
And
Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't. How did they nobody?
Halo waypoints.
I don't guess they got.
They
Were they
have
able to get
Halo
coordinates? I
waypoints.
mean, if somebody in the comments could answer my question, because I've never actually heard anybody ask this question, but I don't know how did they navigate.
And so, anyways, we've been talking directly on the fact of everything, but let's talk about the other stuff. And the other stuff that a lot of people don't really know, in the sense of the people who believe the official story. Let's start off with, I threw out a number a couple minutes ago, $2.3 billion. Trillion dollars. And that wasn't by mistake. 24 hours prior to 9/11, you have Donald Rumsfeld standing up and admitting that
He's like being questioned by Congress, and he's like, "Well, we don't know where we don't have any way to track $2.3 trillion." And I've seen a lot about this, that that this was the the late the early 2000s, and accounting wasn't so good because it didn't have a very good system.
You mean numbers?
It's only our federal government. They're
we're
they
still
make mistakes.
young yet.
They're-
We don't know numbers.
Yeah.
We haven't been educated enough on this numbers thing yet.
200 years is not
200.
enough.
Yeah, we got to get the.
But what really kind of surprises me is that of all the places that a plane could smack the side of the Pentagon, it happened to be in the Naval Accounting Office.
The actual place
place-
that would have been responsible for finding the $2.3 trillion that Donnie lost.
Yeah.
And my buddy Chad, I was talking to him last night, and he's really big that he believes the official story. And he was telling me, he's worked for different government agencies and done computer stuff, and he says that they keep multiple backups of the information. And I'm willing to believe that, but then I hear one of the backups was World Trade Center 7 that wasn't hit by a plane. I'm thinking, well, there's two sources of information there that they took out. I'm pretty sure and then there was more. Wasn't there like 2.5 terabytes of data that they were told to delete?
Yep.
I was watching it earlier while in the middle of doing something.
Even the paper documents were told to be shredded.
Well, and the guy, he said, the congressman said, well, I wasn't sure what 2.5 terabytes was because this was early in, I wasn't sure what 2.5 terabytes was, so I called the Library of Congress, and they said that it was 1/4 of all of the information that was ever stored in the Library of Congress. Like, holy shit.
Yeah. That's not like a little oops. I mean, hitting delete on that, especially when we're talking about the computers of that day, you hit delete on that and you're like, okay, I'll come back in 22, 23 hours.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
There's enough time to go, shit, cancel. So, oh my god, I touched the desk, Scott. Sorry, everybody. That's a pet peeve of Scott here. The desk.
That's gonna be really hard to take out of the audio later. Thanks.
But yeah, it's the
You're not the one that has to fix
But-
the audio.
But anyways, didn't even more money go missing?
it did actually.
Yeah.
This isn't the end of the story with the money train.
No. Wasn't there even more money underneath the trade centers?
Gold.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the gold bullion.
Actually, the largest, if I remember the information correctly, and I'm sure I do, the largest depository of international gold, okay, in the world was underneath Trade Center 2.
Yep.
Okay, South Tower, I believe. And, well,
That just
It's
up
gone.
Yep, up and gone. But then, okay, now let's go to the morning of September 11th. And what was Dick Cheney doing?
well,
Well,
why do you ask that?
Dick Cheney, wasn't he actually at the Pentagon?
Well, no, he wasn't actually. His narrative, he is actually, because of the anniversary, he's been all over television talking about what happened on the morning of 9/11. He was in his office. He says he was in his office in the Capitol building, I believe it was, and he had an aide come in and said, "You got to turn the TV on. A plane just flew into the Trade Center." And he says his statement, which again is all over television, is that right after the aide told him and he turned on the television to see what was happening, his Secret Service detail burst in the room, picked him up, and he actually says this, by the belt and with one hand on his back, and rushed him into PEOC. Now, we do know what PEOC is.
Yeah.
But
Well, why don't you tell the
Presidential Emergency Operations Center. It's a very highly fortified bunker. I believe it's under the White House, but no one knows for sure, I suppose.
But wasn't he involved in some other stuff going on prior to this? Because
I just wanted to say, with his story, who was it that maybe the guy who was the head of the FAA, when he did his testimony, he said that that he was with I think it was Dick Cheney.
Actually, that was Norman Mineta. He was the Secretary of Transportation.
Yep.
Is that what you're talking about?
No, the head of the FAA, whoever he was.
Well, the head of the FAA was, I believe, stationed in New York at the time.
Well, the Asian guy.
That's Norman Mineta, I
Yeah.
believe. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
Secretary of Transportation.
okay, the Secretary of Transportation. Now, his testimony was that he was with Dick Cheney, and there was a guy who kept running in, "Hey, the plane's 30 miles out. Hey, the plane's 20 miles out." And when he came in to say, "Hey, the plane's 10 miles out," he stopped and he asked, he said, "Do the orders still stand?" And Dick Cheney snapped around and said, have you heard anything to the contrary of that? Like, the orders to stay put.
Right. Or as they feed you the line was the orders were to shoot down the plane. Which we find out is a little fishy later since they had no weapons on the plane, but whatever.
well,
Or any plane.
Or any planes in the air.
area.
well, yeah. Let's talk about that. What was NORAD up to the morning of 9/11?
Funny you ask.
War games, actually. War games.
And what were these war games about?
One of them was planes flying into buildings.
Oh, hey, it's
With,
funny
with
you say
false
that.
radar blips and
With the planes flying in the buildings, did you happen to see a picture of the manual?
I think I did. It looked like two pretty tall towers that looked the same, and then a little crosshair over.
Oh, so you're saying is that they were doing a war games, simulating the attack of a plane on the World Trade Center?
But that can't be right, because I'm pretty sure I heard many government officials, including the president, say
And Condoleezza Rice.
that they didn't envision or imagine, nobody from their government or the government before them had imagined such an attack.
Wow. That's
That's
just bizarre.
But they were playing war games about this, all the way down to the point of they purposefully pulled all these planes out of the
Northeast
range.
defense
Yeah,
sector.
out of the entire Northeast. They left the entire Northeast defenseless via the air.
We had two.
Two.
We had 2 planes to cover over a quarter of the country.
Well, and wasn't Donald Rumsfeld questioned and said, did these planes, did they hinder our ability, or they said something along those lines? Did it make it so? Did these war games make it so that we couldn't respond faster? And he said, actually, no. It made it so that that actually enhanced their ability to respond.
So that says a lot like addition by subtraction, but hey.
That's Common Core math for you
Well,
guys.
right,
right
and-
there.
but it's like if it had enhanced their ability to respond.
And again, and even feeding into what the narrative is, they've had pilots now on TV shows, especially in the last couple days, retelling their stories of coming back from North Carolina from this training, and as they're coming back, they're told to intercept some planes, and well, yeah, they don't have any weapons on those planes. What are you gonna do?
Kamikaze? Give your
well,
life
that's what
about
the
it?
one lady says. The one lady says, "Yeah, we just knew we had to ram them." What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. What?
We're the most advanced Air Force in the world.
Use a $17 million aircraft
Right.
and ram
We're just gonna ram a jet.
Let's hope this works.
Right.
But
tell Sally I love her.
holy shit. There's more questions. Okay, so let's go to the private sector of this. Let's actually
Please, let's do that.
let's bring in a man named Larry Silverstein. Let's talk about Larry.
I
Lovable Larry.
I really believe Larry Silverstein is that generation's the vice president now.
Biden?
Yeah, the one who's not allowed to talk.
Yeah.
Biden.
Larry Silverstein is the version from 10 years ago. He should not have been allowed on the air.
Oh God, no.
Because he took the narrative. Imagine the narrative as a piece of paper, and he just went poke, 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 just by talking.
So, any of you guys out there who have no idea who Larry Silverstein is, let me drop some knowledge on you, all right? 6 months prior to 9/11 happening, the trade centers went on to the public market and were bought by Larry Silverstein.
Least.
Leased.
From the Port Authority.
Better yet, leased. And he bought it for 3.2, or leased it for 3.2 billion?
3.2, yes.
But what was 6 weeks prior to
9/11 happening.
9/11 happening, he attempts to up his insurance policy on it.
Fortuitously covered his buildings against terrorism.
Right. Now, keep in mind, he already had the $3.2 billion in coverage that he needed. Okay? He wanted to double it.
Yeah, and it put it up to 7.1.
7.1 or something to that effect.
Now, didn't these buildings need some costly renovations?
They did. They did.
Didn't they have like a fuck ton of asbestos in them?
They did, yes.
And not very good fire suppression either.
Which I believe is a whole other thing that we have to discuss. But
yeah.
Just in case anybody's sitting here like, oh God, they've got a lot to cover. There's only 17 minutes left in this episode. We're going long tonight, guys. So,
okay, take it back where we were.
Back where you were.
Yeah. Larry Silverstein, he decides he needs some extra insurance on these buildings.
Just I don't feel right. Something just doesn't feel right.
Again, maybe he's one of those psychics that was with the BBC.
Man, Miss Cleo had some teachers out there she should have just been tapping into.
So he decides he needs some extra insurance. He tries to get that, and he gets turned down. There's no reason for the extra insurance. Nobody wanted to cover him.
Well, who's going to turn around and cover a policy for $7.1 billion. And you turn, I don't care what insurance company you are, you're like, oh crap, it happened. Here's our company.
Oh, on top of you only needed 3 to cover what was losses.
Yeah.
The expected losses were only 3.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he also put out a couple or what didn't he hire some engineers to start designing up this massive superstructure?
You are correct. He did.
So
It's funny how we all know this.
So
but-
and do you remember what the initial estimate of this massive superstructure was?
Now, I'm going to go on a limb here and say it was probably close to $7 billion.
It was close to $7 billion.
Wow.
Wow. So you have a man who leases this building, wants to up it to the price of what it would cost to do the superstructure on the sole possibility that there might be a terrorist attack that brings down his brand new leased buildings.
Now keep in mind, let's travel back in time to 1993. Ramzi Youssef, we all know his name by now. He decides he's going to blow up the World Trade Center by driving a van full of explosives into the bottom. He does a shit ton of damage. Guess what?
Stands tall.
Yeah.
The whole building is able to continue to stand after this massive...
$18.5 million. That's it in damage. Now, $18.5 million, that's a lot of money. But at $18.5 million compared to the $7 billion he needs to, just in case.
But let's look at the 93 and the fact that this goes off and the entire structure is able to stand after taking that much damage. Yet the narrative of 9/11 is the office fire caused the top 15 floors to come down, and those top 15 floors was enough to bring down the entire building.
Yeah.
Now
it's insane on the face of it, and the more you look into it, it's even worse.
Now, here's another thing. Prior to 9/11, 9/11 did something that had never happened in human history before, in engineering history before, and that was buildings that were steel framed falling due to fire. It never happened prior in history.
You're talking these modern steel frame structures, these high rises?
Yeah, not a single one. And I mean, you can look all over the world and see massive 5-alarm fires where they are just gutted.
Right. Destroying 20, 30 floors of these buildings, and the buildings stand.
Well, let's take a look back at last year, in March of last year in China, when there was that massive chemical explosion that happened, and you see a 60-story office building sitting there, and it has basically been blown out to the frame. But the frame stands tall.
Right.
The frame stands fine. They could turn around and still continue to actually rebuild on that frame because the fire could not get that hot. And we're talking chemical fire, which is going to burn it a lot hotter than actually the jet fuel can.
As you said a little bit earlier, let's drop a little bit of knowledge. And it's always been a pet peeve of mine that people just don't understand what we're talking about with, the fire. There's no way the fires could get that hot. To melt iron, which is taken out of the earth, is about 2,775 degrees Fahrenheit. When you treat that and it becomes steel, it actually does come down a little bit to about 2,500 degrees or so, right in that neighborhood. Jet fuel only burns at 1,512 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, again, math whiz time, you're about 1,000 degrees off.
Well, not only that, but wasn't the steel in the buildings certified by Underwriters Laboratory to have a higher melting point than regular steel?
It was, Scott. And it's funny how you mentioned that because that part's left out on a lot of stories.
Yeah. And the guy actually wrote a letter to NIST that originally came out and said that the steel structure failed because of the fire. And he wrote a letter to him and said that can't be possible. Like it doesn't get hot enough to even mess with the structural integrity of the steel, let alone melt it and turn it into molten steel. Not
Which-
Ooh,
possible.
molten steel. We haven't even touched on that yet.
Right. Several
I mean-
days later.
I mean, firefighters that were there helping clean up said it looked like a foundry. There were sections of stairs that it looked like the steel had just ran through like a river.
Now,
There are sections of steel beams that were fused together. You're not getting hot enough to fuse steel.
not just in preparation for this, because this is not. I'm jumping on the bandwagon. I've looked into this for years.
Oh God, yeah.
I've actually watched some documentaries on steel making, and it takes less than 20 minutes without heat being applied for steel or molten steel to cool significantly that it is not liquid anymore. 20 minutes of no heat.
But
That's it.
Wait a second. Weren't they pulling chunks of rubble out weeks later and finding pools of molten steel?
It's funny how you say that. Yes, they were.
Now, I know that there's been a lot of independent studies because the narrative just wasn't believed by the scientific community. And I forget his name, but I'm sure one of you either have it or know exactly what I'm talking about. But there was a man who decided that he wanted to go and he wanted to test the dust. He wanted to test the dust that was coming from 9/11. And does
Now-
anybody remember what he found?
Go ahead, Scott. I think you want to take this one.
Well, there's this substance. It's called thermite, and it's used in heavy industrial applications and also military applications. But this was
it's thermain, that's military.
We'll get
this
to that.
this had a certain tweak on it. It had another. I want to say it was either like a carbon molecule or something. It had a little bit of a tweak, an extra ingredient that made it burn hotter and for longer. And this ingredient, this actual mixture, is called thermate, and it has a military patent, so that only the military can make it. So therefore, legally. So only our U.S. military has access to this. So
And we're and all throughout the dust, all over the place, you're finding evidence.
wasn't
of,
it 72 independent samples?
Yep.
Yep. And then when asked, why the initial samples never tested for it, well, we didn't know we should.
Okay, but hold on. Isn't there like some sort of protocol when there's a disaster, especially like a big fire like this? Don't they have some sort of investigation protocols?
I believe there might be, yes.
I believe there's like a whole unit.
It isn't like
of
step
people.
2 to test for accelerants and things like that. Isn't that like step 2?
I believe it probably is.
But
now,
but we have a whole commission of people. They didn't do that.
and if it sounds like we're feeding Scott here, it's because Scott
I'm,
has a,
if you can't pick up on my sarcasm here.
he has a serious issue with this part of the official story, and I get the biggest kick out of it because he is so well tuned in to what he knows as far as the actual facts and the way they're misreported and such.
It's
Kind of
just
fun.
And there's an excellent documentary that it doesn't talk about any of the motivations or any of the political or anything about that. It doesn't talk about any of that. It only talks about the science about what happened that day, and it is called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. And
fantastic. I watched it.
It is one of the best. If you want to just go for strict science and just hearing engineers talk about why what happened
Can't happen.
can happen.
So, brings me to another question. In the history of architecture, and because things have toppled and fallen more than is given credit, there's a certain thing that happens, and that is it falls unevenly. It does not go evenly because it's not controlled.
Yeah,
It falls
usually
over.
You'll see like
it'll
a
wobble,
like a
it'll
toppling
tip.
effect. Things topple over.
Yeah, they don't fall straight down on themselves. They don't implode. What we saw was an implosion at free fall speeds.
And I mean,
And-
even on that day,
times.
on that day, 2/3 of the people interviewed that talked about watching it fall said that it looks like what you see on those TV shows when they blow up a building, when a controlled demolition.
The eyewitness accounts of the multiple explosions before that building came down.
I mean, this is actually
it's a pancake collapse.
well, when you see somebody do this, we're actually mimicking one of the videos from where the firefighter is describing how the buildings are popping out with explosions. He can see the explosions
And this isn't
popping out the floors.
This isn't a pressure explosion. This isn't an explosion of air or anything like that. This is an explosion where there's an
incendiary.
there's an
Incendiary
device.
explosion.
Well, I mean, let's just say, okay, that let's entertain for the moment that there was no accelerant, that anything like that happened. If the top 15 floors were to have fallen and hit, it would go just
Right,
like
there
that.
would be a definite.
Like shuddering
Shuddering
effect.
effect.
When it would fall off the sides, this just went
straight into its
down. Like, you can watch the fucking antenna on the thing fucking do this as it goes, just barely wiggling as it just, gracefully just...
right into itself.
I mean,
And-
it is a really graceful thing to watch because you just watch it go... And this tower turns into dust. You can slow down and take frames of the video, and you can see sections of steel beams flying out. Like,
What ejected that? There
Yeah.
has to be something.
But
Hey.
what's crazy is in case the first building falls and you really don't get a good tune of what happens, you could just watch the second one do the same damn thing.
14 minutes later, was it?
Yeah.
Or 30
and not
minutes
to
later?
mention windows and stuff blowing out underneath of it.
Right. You
like,
see that happening.
There's actually part of a video where you see where somebody is ejected out of the side of the building, and if it's falling and it's pancaking, nobody's getting shot out. They're
They're getting
just
squished.
flat.
Right.
But something physically push that man or woman out of the side
And
of the building.
I don't buy air pressure. I don't buy that.
Oh, no.
Because the
air
concrete
pre-
was
the air pressure-
dust.
Right, the air pressure that's created. First of all, the air pressure wouldn't have enough time to shoot somebody out a window.
Well, it was
Or-
the air pressure inside that building was already compromised because you have these
windows were out.
The windows were out, and also at this point the integrity of the elevator shafts had been compromised.
They were hermetically sealed. The elevator shafts were hermetically sealed. It means no air in or out. And somehow when these planes hit and exploded, somehow in the lobby, fireballs shot out of the elevator. They said that it came out of the elevator
Right.
and rocked
In
the whole lobby.
In the basement, it happened too. They say there's many eyewitness stories of people in the basements of the elevator shafts themselves, not just the elevators because the elevators are up higher, but the elevator shafts are exploding. They're exploding out. And this isn't. I'm not talking jet fuel coming down an elevator shaft.
Yeah, they're
I'm
not going to
talking
have
doesn't
the
do that.
pressure, and it can't. The fireball can't physically go down it if there's no air, hermetically sealed.
Well, fire burns up. It
doesn't- it doesn't
pesky little
travel
thing
down.
that- yeah.
Yeah.
So,
The heat rises.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That must be new.
hold
Yeah.
on. I'm gonna go. I've seen fire travel down.
It
But-
has to be traveling on something.
Yeah,
Something
it
has to
needs an
carry it.
accelerant. Yeah,
Yeah.
it absolutely needs an accelerant. You just can't push it down. No, the only way that it follows down is if there's an accelerant.
Right.
Like
Fire burns up, buildings burn down. It's kind
Yeah,
of-
heat rises. And I just I want to go back to the whole steel beam thing. Okay, anybody who's been camping knows the signs of a fire that is struggling. Okay, you have very dark smoke coming out of that fire, very dark, very thick smoke because it's starving. It's not burning up a lot of that stuff. It's just kind of smoldering. Now, we can look at the Twin Towers, and I've seen the videos of jet fuel burning. It doesn't, when it burns and it's burning good, it doesn't have that big, thick, black cloud. Now, if you watch these towers burn, the very thick, rich smoke coming out of there is an indication of an oxygen-starved fire.
Right.
There's not a lot of air in there.
Several firefighters on several of the floors reported isolated, oxygen-starved fires, and they seemed confident. I've heard these recordings.
Yeah, he
They
said,
seemed
send us
confident.
2 lines up here, we can wipe it out.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And within a half an hour, these buildings are falling at free. What? Whoa, hold
Yeah.
on. I don't get this.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got firefighters not only inside that were on scene that day, but from all over the country and the world saying that's impossible. So now you have architects and engineers, fire experts. You have the scientific community all banding together, going, "This is impossible."
You have pictures of people standing in the open wound of the building. Like standing there, grabbing hold of rebar, standing there looking down. Okay, if that fire is hot enough to melt that steel or even bend it, it is a furnace in there, and that person will not survive.
No,
but you can see them standing there.
Here's the best way to put it. At the heat that it would have caused, or that would have been caused to melt that steel beam, what you would have saw was somebody's body fusing to what they were holding. You would have watched them physically melt in front of you, but they stood there.
Melt and sizzle.
They stood there,
They stood
waiting.
there for an extended period of time.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, it might be a little warm, but not enough to do what was said to have happened.
And you had a few people asking, why the lack of rescue from the roofs, because that actually took place in '93, where a lot of people were rescued from the roofs.
Oh yeah, because there's helipads on top.
Absolutely,
of them.
and you had several helicopter pilots coming. Yeah, hey, listen, we tried. We were told to back off once another airplane was coming in.
Yep.
Okay, hold on. Now you're abandoning a rescue, which we're fed more information later that the doors were locked and chained shut from the outside. But okay, not quite sure how that happens.
Yeah.
To lock a door and chain it from the outside. I can't even fathom that part.
Unless you have a helicopter and you take off from the...
Okay, that could be it. With Scott's my little sounding board here.
Well, I mean, you're tossing a bunch of stuff, and I'm knocking the ones back that I think
Thank you, sir.
that people might have some doubt about. So I'm trying
Right.
to clear. I'm trying to clear up the doubt a little bit.
That's what I like to hear. But you have these rescuers. They're told to back off. I mean, several of the eyewitness accounts from the people in the helicopter say that this second plane, literally almost hit one of the rescue helicopters. Mm-hmm. I watched that. I watched it happen live. I didn't see one.
There
was none.
No, and let's go back to the BBC again. While they're doing their reports, they're doing it from a good about mile and a half off. So
Yep.
you see the whole skyline, and the last thing you see are helicopters in the air.
Right.
You don't see them at all. I mean, and if you're really thinking about it, and you take a look at even the media coverage, a lot of the media coverage was from down low or inside of another building. It was not from their helicopters. That was a no-fly zone.
They
shut
absolutely.
that down
But then
ASAP.
you hear these guys saying how they were up there in these helicopters going for rescues. And it's like, whoa, hold on. Now I watched it. You weren't there.
Yeah.
You just weren't. I don't mean to sound like that tin foil hat wearing guy, but it was right there in front of my eyes. That's one thing that stands out to me. It's like you weren't there,
Yeah.
and when you should have been.
Yeah, it's like how you would have expected to see people spill out onto the roof. You
Yeah.
would have expected to see that. And, that's a good point. I never heard of the whole roof thing, but why weren't people on the roofs?
Yeah, I mean, the just in the last couple days, that narrative is coming out now where the doors, they would have been there, but the doors were chained shut from the outside. That makes absolutely no sense to anyone.
No, considering that. Oh wait,
Who chains the door shut and then flies away?
Well, here's the thing too. Okay,
A few ideas.
you could turn around and there might be people out there saying to themselves, well, there really wasn't ever a need for anybody to be on the roof of the building.
Well-
but where are there scaffoldings for them to wash the windows attached to?
On top of the fact that here's
Well, no, a big building like that is going to have a lot of maintenance.
here's an eyewitness account for you. I was on the roof. I was literally in my 4th grade class on the roof of that World Trade Center. I was on that walkway. I lost my hat. Okay?
So it was a tragic event.
It was very tragic.
Because I've never seen you without one.
Right. Most people haven't. And let's keep it that way. But there was a need for people to be on that roof. It was a very common thing for field trips.
By the way, guys, if you donate up to $200 to this show, Bill will wear no hat next episode.
I don't know about that, but we'll see.
All proceeds go to us and not Bill.
Yes, because we'll just steal this hat.
We'll sell it on eBay.
I'll sign it.
But anyways, continue.
Okay, so the fact that nobody was ever needed to be on the roof is just an asinine story. It's just no.
So, I would say that we've pretty much over the last hour fundamentally crushed the crap out of the official story.
Well, there's so much more.
and
you
we haven't
you
even-
gotta go. I
we
mean,
haven't even.
This is a
started-
5-hour episode if
Oh,
we
yeah.
ever had one.
Yeah,
We
I mean,
just
loose-
started scratching the surface.
Loose change is 2 hours alone, and it hits you with fact, all the way through till the end. So you're sitting there like, wow, 9/11 was definitely an inside job.
I mean, we haven't even gotten to the fact that, what was it, 77? American Airlines, American Airlines 77, that was the one
Pentagon.
that was,
Wait.
okay,
93 was Shanksville.
Shanksville, okay,
93.
93, Flight 93, and how it was reported the same day to be in Chicago
And Cleveland.
and Cleveland.
Yeah.
There's
What's
Delta flight actually.
And
that
actually,
emerged.
What is-
here's the crazy thing. Okay, it wasn't until June of this year that Flight 93 was actually taken off the official roster.
Absolutely, and that was because of public outcry that it was still listed as active. 14 years later, that plane was still listed as an active flight.
Yep.
That is incredible. An incredible oversight.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and let's face it, companies that make a profit, they don't have this kind of oversight.
No.
This was just an oversight by the people who were pulling the strings.
And you know what? It's not like the second people started talking about it, they could go, no, it wasn't. Because the second people started talking about it, they had to go, well, if we do anything now,
if we
definitely
acknowledge
gonna
it,
know.
if we acknowledge it, then we're fucked. So
Yeah,
let's just pretend like they're crazy and
La,
don't
la, la,
even
la,
don't
la,
even
la,
let
la,
them
la, la, la.
entertain that fact.
And I mean, that's just some of the stuff that, unfortunately, we can't get into today because we only have a certain amount of time, and we still have one more topic to get into. But guys, if you are out there and you're listening, there are so many documentaries out there that you really need to check out. I know I mentioned One Loose Change. Scott, you mentioned
Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. I mean,
And don't take what we're telling you as fact.
yeah.
Look it up.
please.
That's the most important thing.
We're
Is
not-
these are conspiracy theories. Don't just take it as fact, because there is, as we come to find out,
some of what we've said is theories. We've given you a lot of actual hard facts, like
Right.
Silverstein and
some of these
Trillions
are
of
actual
dollars
looked up
missing.
facts, but you can only take these facts and connect them together as you will. Now, there's some very smart people that have done some very interesting,
Incredible research.
and made very, very interesting connections with all of this information.
And those connections may or may not be as solid as basically what you want them to be.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Some of them are not as as far as the whole Pentagon with the money thing. The government is a shithole of a bureaucratic system, and I could see
of the year.
I could see an agency like the Pentagon is massive. Look, that fucking thing is huge. Like it's many people working in there, as many expenses, as many computers, and as many little dark projects and all kinds of shit that they have going on. I could see losing $2.3 trillion.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all.
But I mean,
Because
we didn't
there,
even.
there are letter agencies we've never heard of.
But we
going
didn't.
on
We
in
didn't even
there.
talk about the put options put on American Airlines. We didn't talk about the insider trading that was on the databases inside the towers. that was recovered by independent data recovery companies.
The fact that George Bush's relative was actually a part of the security team, head of the
His
security.
brother.
We didn't talk about the fact that, Osama bin Laden, up until 5 years prior to this all going down, was actually a welcomed guest at the White House on several separate occasions.
He was actually really into 9/11 conspiracies. Did you know that? He had a couple books on it when they raided his pad. They found on his bookshelf he had a couple of books about 9/11 conspiracies.
Well, up until about 2 months beforehand, he was actually in a hospital due to his little kidney issues. And he was guarded by CIA agents.
We
fact.
didn't get into the fact that years after he was after this whole thing happened, that he was able to elude the most advanced civilization, or the most advanced government with technology for years. While
I think the word you're looking for, intelligence dragnet.
Yes, he was able to elude that while living in a foxhole, while moving from country to country, and then also just staying in a fucking bungalow for 2 years, and we just couldn't find him. Or the fact that the videos, as they were being released, he just kept looking younger and younger
and more
younger,
healthy.
And then we didn't talk about how when they raided his pad, they accidentally killed him, but they didn't have any video of it, and then they discarded of his body, and then half a dozen of the members of the team that killed him died in a
plane crash or a
helicopter crash.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of things that we just didn't have time to get into. But before we wrap this up for the night, there is one thing I'd like to get into. Hillary Clinton.
Oh, poor Hillary.
Hillary. Hillary. So, in keeping tunes with 9/11, yesterday there was the 9/11 memorial service down at Ground Zero. And, you had everybody showing up. You had Trump, you had Clinton.
Your Donald Trumps and your Bill and Hillary Clintons.
And everything. And midway through the service, Hillary just ups and leaves. But then,
she's got to leave, but she's doing it early. Her motorcade is not at all ready.
No.
So she pulls up and she has to stand there on the curb for a minute while the motorcade pulls up. Now, it's kind of, up to what you see, because you only see kind of one angle of it. But it almost looks like she's being propped up.
Well, the one angle actually shows, if you let me real quick, Scott, it shows one guy like this holding her up, but then as they start to walk, she takes a stumble. Well, it was like this was a choreography that they have done so many different times. You see one guy step in front of the camera. You see another guy come around the side and just get another arm underneath her and help her.
See everybody move in. But then you see...
a shoe.
She does lose a shoe.
Well, her feet... I saw this zoomed-in version, and her feet actually go from being flat on the ground to toes up and like this.
So she was being dragged into the vehicle.
And the guy who witnessed it said the exact same thing. Before the video really came, the guy on Fox News telling the story that he was just told says exactly what you see in the video.
Right.
And it's just like, I don't think that her campaign's going to survive this. Everybody's saying, "Oh, she has pneumonia."
Well, pneumonia has actually a high mortality rate with the elderly, because it leaves the body very susceptible to other infections. And you can take a look throughout the last even couple years where you're seeing people who have passed away due to, let's look at, I know he had a lot of drug problems, but let's look at Rick James. Rick James actually died of heart failure due to complications from pneumonia at 65. You look at, there was another person, his name is slipping my mind, 50 years old, famous, passed away from heart complications due to pneumonia. And pneumonia is something that is not just take a shot, go away.
Right, and let's face it, I mean, she very well could have it. I believe she probably does have it.
No, her campaign announced that last Friday she was actually diagnosed with pneumonia.
Can we go back to her head injury? Was it a couple years ago? She fell off a stage and had a pretty severe head injury and blood clot on her brain. Mm-hmm. Like, she almost died. Okay? Like, this was pretty bad. And now I've seen one video where it shows a guy walking next to her, and he's got a syringe, like, ready to go. He's holding it like this, but it's down here. He's, like, trying to be discreet about it. But it's a whole bunch of people. It looks like she's about to walk out onto this thing. Well, and then another clip within this video shows her standing there talking. And then she gets this look on her face. Mm-hmm. Now, I've heard this described from other people that is the first warning sign that a seizure is coming. Like, you can almost sense it, like a sneeze almost. Like, and she got this look on her face of just terror and panic. And it just looked like she just... Mm-hmm. And, like, all of a sudden, 4 or 5 security guards rush up around her while she's on stage and grab her, and then she, like, snaps out of it and keeps talking, and they just kind of walk away. It's like, what the fuck just happened?
But the minute somebody brought to attention the guy with the syringe, he disappeared quick.
Yeah,
okay. One of the many people who have disappeared when questioning Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Sure, I just hit a list to eventually be taken care of for questioning.
Right.
Yeah, well, you know she's got somebody else that follows around with her syringe now. She's like, you can't be seen with me anymore.
Right.
Yeah. But, I mean, then, a couple hours go by, and she pops out of her daughter's her daughter's flat, looking fine, looking good.
Sure.
Her doctor's saying she's good and everything, but
she needs to take some rest.
She needs to take some rest, but at the same time, normally when you get sick, regardless of what's going on, you'll go see the doctor and everything, and if you're, this isn't the first time somebody's gotten sick during a campaign.
Right.
It happens. People get the flu or stuff like that, and you know what doesn't happen? The Democratic National Convention or the Republican National Convention doesn't have an emergency meeting to start discussing who they might want to replace you with, which means she's got a larger health issue than what's being reported. Now, I know for a while there's been a couple profound doctors in the medical community who have come out and said that they are pretty sure she's got Parkinson's.
That's actually what's it called? The Goldwater rule. And it was because back in the day somebody was running for president, and
Senator Barry Goldwater.
It's really kind of a taboo thing for doctors, for people to diagnose somebody that they haven't actually seen, and it's almost kind of like teetering on Hippocratic Oath violations. So it's one of those things where when you talk about somebody's health, but you haven't really met with them, you're just kind of
speculating.
I do believe you are right, Matt. Though I believe there's a larger health issue, whatever it may be.
Right.
But we're about to see something come down. I mean, you hear people talk about this October surprise when talk about elections, and I wouldn't like my view of October surprise was Trump dropping out. I think you got to look on the other side. I think Hillary's gone. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. Her numbers are slipping hard right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
Trump's within 4 points of her on most likely voter polls, which is just scary compared to where it was 3-4 weeks ago, where she was in double digits.
Oh yeah, and then this it's mind-boggling because but then also on the other side, Trump has been hammering on her health for the last couple months now.
Yeah.
Like, that is one of his main hitting points, is he doesn't think that she's healthy enough to run.
What does he know?
What does he know? Considering that...
Of course he knows something.
He has to, but...
I mean, if we know it, or we can see something.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no way that he hasn't paid a good stack of change to find out what's going on with Hillary Clinton.
Right.
He might not be able to come out and say she's got this because...
He's the king of private investigators, man.
Oh, yeah.
He
knows.
He goes after everybody.
He knows.
Right, and there's absolutely no way he would take the risk of saying it. Saying, hey, listen, this is what's wrong.
No, he wouldn't tell you what is wrong, but he will definitely tell you to watch.
That something is wrong.
Something is wrong. Yeah, and it's just it's interesting because I took a look at his Twitter account, and honestly, if you guys ever want a really interesting, just off the wall read,
It's so hard because when he talks about Hillary Clinton, you're just like, yeah! And then he talks about anything else, you're like, no!
yeah, like this man drops so many truth bombs on Hillary Clinton that you're like, yeah, you know what? That's pretty awesome. But then at the end of the day, you're just like, but you should stop talking. But
His speechwriters say the same thing.
yeah, they really do. But one thing that he was doing was he was making a lot of references towards our ninth president. That's what was it? William Henry
Harrison.
Harrison.
18 days in office.
31 days in
31,
office. And what did he die of?
Pneumonia. Yep.
Pneumonia. And he's basically saying, like, this is going to be, if she wins, it'll be the most successful presidency since.
Well,
Right.
and-
George Washington actually died of pneumonia
and
too
like-
afterwards, but
like my buddy Andrew posted online, he said that he's becoming more worried about who's the vice president than who is the president. Because either way, if Hillary wins, she's probably going to die, and then you're going to have somebody else. If Donald Trump wins, he doesn't have political knowledge. He's just going to pass it off to guy number 2.
Here's where this situation gets scary, okay? Because now, Bernie Sanders, I swear to God, man, had foresight. He never pledged his delegates. He never pledged his delegates over to Hillary Clinton. I think he knew something was coming.
Yeah, well,
So-
that he stayed in
Yeah.
so long, he knew something was coming. But I think I read somewhere. Now, this is the internet, and, there's a lot of bullshit on the internet. But somebody was saying that they had, knowledge that his wife had been physically threatened if he didn't endorse Hillary Clinton.
I've
Now,
heard that too.
I wouldn't put that past old Hill Dog.
oh,
Yeah,
I
wouldn't put it past her, but it's one of those things. It's unconfirmed.
And
So
it's just one of those things, like, if it's like that probably didn't happen, but if it did, then it did happen.
yeah, if it did happen, not surprised. that it
It's
happened.
like one of those, on one hand, I could see that happening, but on the other hand,
You mentioned Clinton, anything's
maybe
possible.
not,
Yeah. But one thing that's kind of scary about this whole situation is that, even though he didn't pledge his delegates, the way that the system works is even if she were to drop out, it doesn't automatically mean, he's good to go, because this has actually never happened before. Nobody has ever dropped out so far into a race. Once they have been slated as the person who is running, they've never dropped out. So, pending on how this all goes down, if the delegates are counted already and she drops out, then her VP automatically becomes the
President-elect, right.
President-elect. Now, if the delegates aren't counted, then they can turn around and they can
have Bernie, if he would, I believe
Bernie-
he would have to accept that.
Bernie would have to accept that, but then also there's the ability for the DNC to say, well, we don't have to go with Bernie. We could throw somebody else in the mix. They could bring
Tim
in
Kaine, fuck it, let's...
They could throw in Joe Biden. They could be like, Biden, you know what? Screw it."
Biden doesn't want it.
Biden
Biden's
wants
like
no
8
bit of
years
this.
and I'm out. Fuck
Yes.
this.
And they might actually let Joe talk, so I don't
Yeah.
think they'd actually want him either.
And there's even talks about the fact that Michelle Obama
Oh my
might
I was
so-
hoping you weren't going there.
there's all these different things, but it gets even scarier. Okay, so let's take into
like
this.
we need to extend the war on fat children.
But it gets even scarier, okay? So if they turn around and the delegates are placed, and Congress has not counted the delegates at this point, so everything's in, and then she drops, then it doesn't have to go to her VP elect either, because it's unprecedented. They haven't thought of what to do. So at that point, Congress could turn around and elect whoever the fuck they want to elect. They don't have to go with anybody who's even in the race. They could be like, yo, let's get Joe the plumber, and he's our president now, and that's who our president would be. I mean, they could basically Julius Caesar this whole thing and just elect someone, whoever they want to
And
represent.
I would
the
say
people.
that's so far out there. Couldn't happen, but we saw what happened in 2000.
Ugh.
I mean, the Supreme Court chose our president.
Oh yeah.
So, at this point, anything is kind of on the table.
You know, I sent a message to Scott the other day, and I said, you know, the more and more I'm walking around and paying attention to things, the more and more I start seeing, you know, stuff for Trump popping up everywhere.
It's everywhere.
I mean, everywhere. I don't know if it's just the town we live in or just the state or what, but I see it everywhere. I know people left and right who are going to be voting for Trump.
Well, I even want to say, I think it was Brian Redband on Joe Rogan's podcast, plug, on Joe Rogan's podcast even said, like, he shares the same sentiment that a lot of people do. Where are these Hillary voters? Where are they?
Yeah.
Like, where are the Hillary bumper stickers? Where are the T-shirts? Where are the campaign signs? Where are they?
As much as I thought Obama's election was fixed, that there's no way he wins that popular vote by any stretch, you did see Obama Biden stickers. You
everywhere,
saw the signs.
everywhere. You saw the stickers.
Yeah, I mean,
But one of the things I was saying to Scott was I'm seeing that. I'm not seeing a lot of Hillary, but I see the writing on the wall. He's going to win that popular vote, but sure enough, they're just going to... Hillary won. Yeah, they're just going to hand it to her, unless she's not there.
I mean, we saw how these Democratic conventions went. The people on the stage just went, well, yeah, whatever, fuck you. You know,
Yeah.
we're voting for Hillary. Hillary's us.
You
Fuck
wanted
you.
Bernie? Oh, that's so bad. That's so bad for
I got
you.
it, yeah.
Yeah, so, but, but, I mean, it's just, God, that's such a clusterfuck of what's going to go down because, I mean, 5 days ago, you sit back and you go, okay, it's Hillary or it's Trump. And, you know, okay, so there's some Jill Stein and Gary Johnson in there, but
not much.
anyways, and, you know,
Jill Stein's being too busy getting arrested.
I
Yeah.
endorse Gary Johnson.
but,
Or Jill Stein.
you have all that, and then now we're sitting here 5 days later, and we're unsure if Hillary's even going to be in the race come next week.
And you know Donald Trump's just sitting there.
He's sitting there like this,
He's sitting there like this.
yeah, with his little
Tiny
hands, with his little
Montgomery
hands.
Burns.
But at the same time, he could be sitting there like this, but in the back of his mind, he's like, "Please, dear God, don't be Bernie. Don't be Bernie. Don't be Bernie. Because if it's Bernie Sanders, you're just going to watch the numbers. Just his numbers go." Because his rhetoric and the shit that he's been saying, it can stand the test of time when it's standing up against somebody like Hillary Clinton because she's saying off the wall bullshit just like he is.
Right.
But when you have somebody like Bernie Sanders who, you know,
genuinely loved by the people. Loved. People got tattoos. People got fucking tattoos of Bernie Sanders.
You know,
you're
and-
fucking idiots, but fucking people just. I mean, the murals on walls and building are like. In Richmond, there's a giant thing of a mural of Bernie Sanders like dancing, like.
and I mean, you have that. His rhetoric just hits a brick wall. The second Bernie would be brought back in, I mean, if it would be such a. I think.
Well,
it would be a fucking
Bernie would do
landslide.
like if he was in a debate with Bernie Sanders,
I don't think
Donald
he would
Trump
accept
would say
it.
some off the wall shit, and Bernie would just be like. He'd do that old guy thing that just what the fuck ever. Just
Like, I'm
just,
judging you so hard right now, face.
He'd do that. Anyway, back on topic, and just like not even just
Because one thing that happened with Bernie, yeah, okay, don't get me wrong, he definitely had no problem calling Hillary Clinton out on things, but one thing that Bernie never did is he didn't attack. He never did attack ads. He never went after people for things that weren't relevant. I mean, you don't get me wrong.
Oh, and
He
the one
definitely
time-
attacked the
the-
fuck out of Hillary
the
for
one
those
time-
speeches, but those were relevant.
The
as
one
fuck.
time that he turned and went to fight back, they immediately jumped on his case. Like somebody misquoted Hillary Clinton and said that she said that he wasn't qualified to be president, and he just knee jerk. What? She's not qualified to be president. Like, and then everybody jumped on his case, and it's like,
That was
holy
his one
shit.
transgression in his entire campaign. Like, that's the one thing that they could hang their
Well,
hat on.
they were
But
trying to fuck him over early with that whole database access thing, and I could see it from the beginning that they just
that he was the candidate that everybody wanted, but the country.
Well,
but
the second that they
players,
revoked
the players were like, no.
The second that they revoked his access to the database,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when he got the biggest bump that he did. Everybody was like, "Wait, what the? What? Are you kidding me? Why are you fucking over him? What's?" And everybody started looking into him. I'm like, "Oh, this is why you fucking him over." Okay.
He doesn't want to play your games, and that's when that's when you saw what transpired.
Okay. Well,
yeah. Let's.
it's 6:30. We're talking about Bernie Sanders now, or
9:30.
not
9:30.
9:30. Sorry, clock's off on that computer.
doesn't understand time.
Yeah, 6:30, 9:30.
So he's worth a $3.2 trillion, Wayne, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
to manipulate time.
All right. So you can just wrap
Final
it.
thoughts?
Final thoughts.
Listen, my final thought is about 9/11 itself.
Ours all will be.
Yeah, it's the tributes that went on. I saw a lot. I was annoyed as shit by a lot. There were over 3,000 people killed that day. I heard specific mention being made over and over again about firefighters and police. And, you see a police, go thank them. Listen, they were doing their job, okay? 668 people from an accounting firm, for Christ's sake, lost their lives. Those are the people that what the hell just happened? Not the cops, not the firefighters. Yes, they did a brave thing. That's their job, though.
Yeah.
Back it down with the whole rhetoric, NYPD, FDNY. Back it down. There are other people that you need to look into. I want to say these names because I committed a lot of them to memory because it just annoys the shit out of me when I hear this firefighter, police, firefighter, police, firefighter, police. You know what? What about the guys from the different accounting firms, the daycares, everything that was lost on that day? Okay? 3,000 people, not just firefighters and police. Amen. So remember them.
My final thought is, when you boil pasta, you always want to add salt to the water for flavor. If you don't add salt to the water, you're going to have not flavorful pasta.
Okay. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Bill was saying. Not only do I want to, say that we should be focusing on the 3,000 lives or the 2,996 lives that were lost inside the trade centers that day. But one thing I think that we should really also remember is the fact of, after this happened, there was a war that started, a war on terror that didn't even go to the center of where this whole thing was supposed to have taken place. And since then, there has been 1,425,000 civilians who have lost their lives in Afghanistan alone. We should be thinking about them too, because all they did was live in a place that was rich with resources that our greedy government wanted, and that that the government turned around and cooked up a story to get everybody behind them so they could go and extend America's freedoms into a place that they just didn't belong. I think at the end of the day, the lesson that we should learn here is that maybe America needs to take a step back and fix itself before we start trying to fix the world, because our country is broken. It is so incredibly broken, and to the point of the government has no problem duping its entire populace to where they can go and do a resource grab at the expense of lives, governments, whatever they want to do. So my final thought is, instead of worrying about what's going on in other countries, who's doing what and whatnot, why don't we pay a little bit more attention to our own and stop trying to be world police and fix what's going on at home. And also, I don't put salt in my pasta. Anyways, guys, this has been our episode about Hillary Clinton and 9/11. Make sure you guys tune in next week to our awesome episode of Question Your Perception Reality 2.0. Almost said Cop Blast Podcast. And then also Wednesday night, make sure you tune into LRN.FM to find myself and Severin Freeman live for Cop Block Radio. It's an interesting show. I'm sure you guys would hear something that you enjoy. Until next week, guys, take it easy. Don't forget to record any of your interactions with the police. Always hold your phone sideways and stay safe.
And I'm Scott Marshall.
I'm Bill Godin.
And I'm Matt Taylor.
And remember, question your perception.
Good night.
Good night.